First response. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the pulsing alert on her medical tablet, her untouched breakfast growing cold beside her in the Helios Station's staff lounge. Third medical emergency this week, but this one was different. The warning symbols next to the patient's species designation made most medical professionals on the station look the other way. Vraxian. Crystalline physiology. Highly corrosive biochemistry. She was already moving before the second alert chimed, her measured steps quickening to a run as she reached the emergency storage units. The other medical staff watched in silence as she punched in her access code and pulled out the specialized containment suit. They all knew the risks of treating a Vraxian. Their crystalline bodies secreted highly corrosive compounds when injured, capable of eating through standard medical equipment and protective gear in minutes. Dr. Chen. Station Chief Medical Officer Torres called out, his voice tight with concern. Protocol suggests waiting for the Vraxian medical ship. They're better equipped. Which is 12 hours away at best. Sarah cut him off, checking the seals on her suit. Have you seen the vitals? The patient won't last too. She grabbed her modified medical kit, the one she'd spent months developing despite the budget committee's skepticism. Right now, those long hours of preparation didn't seem like a waste anymore. The emergency site was in loading bay 12, where a cargo transfer had gone wrong. Sarah could see the gathering crowd from a distance, all keeping a conspicuous perimeter around the accident scene. The air sparkled with an iridescent mist, Vraxian distress secretions already starting to corrode the metal flooring. Through her suit's protective visor, Sarah saw the patient. The Vraxian's crystalline form was normally a sight of beauty, with naturally occurring geometric patterns that caught and reflected light in stunning ways. Now those same surfaces were clouded and cracked, with deep fissures running through the mineral-based flesh. The victim lay partially pinned under a fallen cargo container, each movement causing more fractures to spiderweb across their surface. I'm Dr. Chen, Sarah announced, approaching steadily while her suit's sensors analyzed the chemical composition of the corrosive mist. I'm here to help. Can you understand me? The Vraxian's sensory crystals flickered weakly, their equivalent of opening eyes. I understand, they responded, their voice creating harmonic resonances in the air. I am Carix. The others, they stayed away. Well, I'm not others, Sarah replied, kneeling beside Carix and beginning her scans. The damage was extensive, but her specially designed equipment could handle it. I've studied Vraxian physiology. I'm going to help you, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Carix's crystals pulsed in what Sarah recognized as affirmation. She worked quickly, applying a synthetic polymer she'd developed specifically for crystalline life forms. It would temporarily stabilize the fractures, preventing further degradation until proper healing could begin. The substance sparked and smoked as it reacted with Carix's natural secretions, but held firm, just as she designed it to. The container, Carix managed, their voice growing weaker. My lower segments. I know, Sarah replied, already signaling to the emergency response robots she'd modified for exactly this scenario. Standard lifting equipment would deteriorate too quickly, but these units have been adapted. We'll have you free in moments. As she worked, Sarah could hear the murmurs from the growing crowd. She caught fragments of conversations, speculation about why a human doctor would risk treating a Vraxian, warnings about the dangers of their biochemistry, and underneath it all, a growing sense of curiosity as her modifications proved effective. The emergency robots positioned themselves precisely, their reinforced frames beginning to lift the cargo container. Sarah monitored Carix's vital signs carefully, watching for signs of additional stress fractures. The removal had to be done carefully. Too fast or too slow could cause catastrophic damage to Carix's already compromised structure. Almost there, she assured her patient, noting how the clouding in Carix's crystals had started to stabilize. The polymer was working, creating a protective barrier that allowed the natural healing processes to begin. You're doing great. Just hold on a little longer. With a final coordinated effort, the robots lifted the container clear. Sarah immediately began applying more polymer to the newly exposed injuries, her movements precise and confident. Years of research, months of preparation, and countless hours of practice guided her hands. This wasn't just about saving one life. It was about proving that humans could adapt, could find ways to help even the most alien of species. Why? Carrick's asked as their vital signs began to stabilize. Why risk yourself when others wouldn't? Sarah smiled behind her visor, though she knew Vraxians couldn't read human facial expressions. Because that's what doctors do. We help people, all people. And sometimes, being human means finding ways to do what everyone else thinks is impossible. As she continued her treatment, Sarah could see other medical staff starting to approach, their initial fear giving way to professional curiosity. She had done more than save a life today. She had taken the first step toward breaking down barriers that had existed since humans first joined the galactic community. Carrick's crystals began to regain their natural luster, the clouding slowly fading as the healing process took hold. It would be a long recovery, but the immediate danger had passed. Sarah sat back on her heels, finally allowing herself to feel the exhaustion seeping into her muscles. The suit had protected her from the corrosive effects of Vraxian biochemistry, but it wasn't designed for comfort. "You know," she said, beginning her final scans, "I've actually been hoping to study Vraxian healing mechanisms more closely. If you're interested, this could be an opportunity for both of us to learn something new." Carrick's crystals pulsed with what Sarah had learned to recognize as amusement. "You humans," they resonated, their voice stronger now. "Always turning everything into a chance to learn more. Is that a yes?" "It would be my honor, Dr. Chen. Perhaps it is time we Vraxians learned something new as well." Breaking barriers. The emergency treatment bay of Helios Station's medical wing had never housed a Vraxian patient before. The modifications Sarah had made to accommodate Carrick's unique physiology stood out starkly against the standard medical equipment. Specialized containment fields, crystalline growth medium tanks, and monitoring devices calibrated for mineral-based life forms. "Your core temperature has stabilized," Sarah announced, reviewing the latest readings. "The synthetic matrix is integrating well with your natural crystal structure." She adjusted the environmental controls, fine-tuning the atmosphere to promote optimal Vraxian healing. Carrick's surface caught the medical bay's lights, throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. "The pain has lessened considerably," they resonated, their harmonic voice stronger than the day before. "Though I admit, I never expected to experience human medical care firsthand." Sarah was about to respond when Chief Medical Officer Torres entered the bay, his expression a mixture of concern and reluctant admiration. He stayed near the entrance, eyeing the containment field warily. "Dr. Chen, the Vraxian medical ship has arrived ahead of schedule. They're requesting immediate transfer of the patient." "With all due respect, sir, moving Carrick's now would be dangerous," Sarah countered, pulling up her latest scans. "The crystal regrowth is at a critical phase. Any disruption could cause catastrophic fracturing." "Dr. Chen," Torres began, his tone careful, "while your emergency intervention was impressive, the liability issues of continuing to treat a Vraxian patient are covered under Galactic Medical Protocol 47B, Sarah finished, which states that in cases where transfer poses a significant medical risk, the attending physician may continue treatment until the patient is stable enough for transport. Torres frowned. "You've studied the protocols thoroughly." "I've studied everything thoroughly, sir, including Vraxian physiology, their medical requirements, and their rights under coalition law." Sarah pulled up another display, showing the complex crystalline regrowth patterns. "Look at these readings. The synthetic matrix isn't just stabilizing the damage, it's promoting natural regeneration at twice the normal rate." Before Torres could respond, the bay's communication system chimed. A Vraxian face appeared on the main screen, its crystalline features arranged in what Sarah recognized as a formal greeting pattern. "I am Chief Healer Zix of the Vraxian Medical Corps," the figure announced. We have reviewed Dr. Chen's treatment logs and scans. There was a pause, during which the Vraxian's crystals shifted through several complex patterns. The techniques she has developed are unprecedented. We request permission to send a medical observer to study these methods. Torres blinked in surprise. You want to learn from our methods? Dr. Chen has achieved something our own healers have struggled with for generations, Six replied. The integration of synthetic materials with our crystalline biology has always been problematic. Yet her polymer matrix shows perfect compatibility. Sarah felt a surge of pride, quickly tempered by professional modesty. The key was understanding how Vraxian crystal structures respond to electromagnetic resonance patterns, she explained. By matching the synthetic polymer's molecular frequency to your natural growth harmonics, you created a bridge between our biologies, Six finished, their crystals pulsing with what Sarah now recognized as excitement. This could revolutionize emergency treatment for our people. Torres looked between the screen and Sarah, his earlier skepticism giving way to realization. I'll need to consult with station administration about the observer request, he said finally. But given the circumstances, Dr. Chen, continue your treatment program. Keep me updated on the patient's progress. After Torres left, Carix's crystals rippled in a pattern Sarah hadn't seen before. You are causing quite a disturbance in our medical community, they observed. Many believed humans, too, biologically incompatible to understand our needs. That's the thing about humans, Sarah replied, adjusting the growth medium flow. We're remarkably good at adapting, at finding ways to bridge gaps others think are uncrossable. We just need the right motivation. And what was your motivation, Dr. Chen? Sarah paused in her work, considering the question. Curiosity, initially. Your species' biology is fascinating. But more than that, I saw how isolated Vraxians were in coalition space, how many opportunities for cooperation were being lost because of simple biological differences. Someone had to take the first step toward changing that. The next few days brought a stream of visitors to the medical bay. The Vraxian observer, a junior healer named Tykes, proved to be an eager student of Sarah's methods. Human medical staff, initially hesitant, began to show interest in the remarkable recovery rates her techniques achieved. Even station administrators, seeing the potential diplomatic benefits, started discussing the possibility of establishing a permanent Vraxian medical liaison office. But it was the small changes that meant the most to Sarah. The way other doctors no longer flinched when Carix's crystalline form caught the light. How station crew members would stop by just to chat, fascinated by the Vraxian's perspective on coalition politics and culture. The barriers weren't just breaking. They were dissolving, replaced by bridges of understanding. Your recovery is progressing excellently, Sarah told Carix one evening, reviewing the day's growth charts. The new crystal formation is nearly indistinguishable from your original structure. Thanks to your innovation, Carix responded, their voice creating subtle harmonics that Sarah had learned indicated deep gratitude. Though I suspect you have healed more than just my injuries. Sarah looked up from her charts, noting how the medical bay now seemed to flow with constant traffic. Human and Vraxian medical staff collaborating, sharing insights, learning from each other. Sometimes, she said with a smile, the best medicine isn't about healing bodies at all. It's about healing perceptions, breaking down walls we built ourselves. Through the medical bay's viewport, the stars of coalition space twinkled steadily, bearing witness to another small step forward in the grand journey of interspecies cooperation. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth, that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come not from grand gestures or complex technologies, but from one person choosing to reach across the divide, to help someone in need, regardless of the differences between them. Understanding differences. 2 weeks into Carix's treatment, Sarah found herself learning as much as she was teaching. The medical bay had become an impromptu cultural exchange center, with Vraxian and human medical staff working side by side, each bringing their own unique perspectives to the healing arts. The resonance patterns in your cellular structure are fascinating, Sarah commented, analyzing the latest scans. They're almost like a living symphony. She adjusted the monitoring equipment, its displays showing complex waves of energy flowing through Carix's crystalline form. An apt comparison, Carix replied, their surface shimming with amusement. Music and healing are deeply intertwined in our culture. Each crystalline formation has its own harmonic signature, its own song, you might say. When we're injured, those harmonies become discordant. Sarah leaned forward, intrigued. That's why your people use sonic therapy in your traditional medicine. You're literally retuning the body's natural frequencies. She made a quick note in her research log. We could potentially modify the polymer matrix to enhance these harmonic properties. Tix, the Vraxian medical observer, moved closer to examine the displays. Your understanding of our physiology goes beyond mere scientific knowledge, Dr. Chen. You seem to grasp the underlying principles that our healers spend years learning to perceive. Humans have a saying, Sarah replied, making subtle adjustments to the treatment protocols. Sometimes you have to learn to listen with more than just your ears. Understanding comes from being willing to experience things from a different perspective. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from the station's engineering section. Dr. Chen. The chief engineer's voice crackled over the comm system. We need your expertise. We've got a situation with the station's crystal matrix power core. Sarah exchanged glances with Carix and Tix. The station's power core used synthetic crystals to regulate energy flow, technology that had been adapted from Vraxian designs. What's the problem? The core's harmonics are destabilizing. We've tried standard procedures, but nothing's working. Given your success with Vraxian crystal structures, I'll be right there, Sarah responded, already gathering her equipment. She turned to Carix. Would you be willing to consult? Your insight could be valuable. Carix's crystals pulsed with surprise. You would trust a patient's judgment in such a critical situation. I trust expertise where I find it, Sarah replied simply. And right now, we need to combine our knowledge if we're going to solve this problem. Using a mobile medical platform modified to safely transport Carix, they made their way to the engineering section. The power core's chamber hummed with discordant energy, its massive synthetic crystals pulsing with an irregular rhythm that made Sarah's teeth ache. The harmonic disruption is severe, Carix observed, their own crystalline form resonating slightly with the core's frequencies. But the pattern seems familiar. Sarah pulled up the data from her treatment of Carix's injuries, comparing it to the core's readings. Look at this. The destabilization pattern is similar to what we saw in your damaged crystal structure. The core isn't just malfunctioning. It's injured, Carix finished. The synthetic crystals are experiencing trauma, just as organic crystals would. The engineering team watched in fascination as Sarah and Carix worked together, applying the principles they'd discovered during Carix's treatment to the station's power systems. Sarah modified her polymer matrix to work with the synthetic crystals, while Carix guided the harmonic adjustments needed to restore proper resonance. Remarkable, the chief engineer muttered as the core's discordant hum gradually shifted back to its normal frequency. We've been treating it like a machine when we should have been treating it like a living system. Everything is connected, Carix resonated softly. Your human technology and our Vraxian biology, synthetic crystals and organic ones, different species and cultures, all part of the same cosmic dance of energy and matter. Sarah nodded, understanding flowing between them without need for words. That's why progress often comes from unexpected places, when we stop seeing differences as barriers and start seeing them as opportunities to learn, to grow, to discover new harmonies. The success with the power core led to even more collaboration. Engineers began consulting with Vraxian experts on crystal technology. Medical staff exchanged techniques and insights, and cultural barriers continued to crumble. Sarah's treatment methods were being adapted for use throughout coalition space, saving lives and building bridges between species that had long kept their distance. You've started something remarkable, Carrick's told her one evening as they reviewed the latest coalition medical reports. Not just in medicine, but in how different species view each other. Sarah smiled, watching the steady pulse of Carrick's now-healed crystal structure. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the simplest actions, like being willing to help someone in need, regardless of their biology or background. Through the medical bay's viewport, the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly, filled with countless worlds and species, each with their own unique songs to share. And on Helios Station, a human doctor and her Vraxian patient had proved that the greatest symphony of all comes from learning to blend those songs together in harmony. Crisis point. The warning klaxons jolted Sarah awake in the early hours of station morning. Red emergency lights pulsed through the corridors as she rushed to the medical bay, her mind already racing through possible scenarios. The sight that greeted her stopped her in her tracks. A cargo vessel had suffered a catastrophic drive failure while attempting to dock, its hold full of unstable crystal matrices, raw materials destined for coalition shipyards. The resulting explosion had torn through 3 docking bays, leaving dozens injured, including several Vraxian crew members who had been overseeing the shipment. Multiple casualties incoming, Torres announced, his voice steady despite the chaos, including 5 Vraxians with severe crystalline fractures. Dr. Chen, you're our only expert in Vraxian treatment. But we don't have enough specialized equipment for multiple Vraxian patients. Sarah finished, already calculating possibilities. I'll need to modify the emergency protocols. Carrick's, now nearly recovered, moved forward on their medical platform. I can assist. My knowledge of crystal harmonics, combined with your treatment methods, could help us save more lives. Sarah nodded. But your own healing isn't complete. The strain cold. Some risks are worth taking. Carrick's interrupted, their crystals pulsing with determination. You taught me that, Doctor. The first casualties began arriving, human and Vraxian alike. Sarah quickly organized the medical team, pairing human doctors with Vraxian observers, teaching them rapid response versions of her treatment techniques. The air filled with the hum of emergency equipment and the crystalline resonance of injured Vraxians. We need more polymer matrix, one of the human doctors called out. The synthesizers can't keep up with demand. Sarah turned to Carrick's, who was already analyzing the chemical formulae. The base compounds can be modified. They resonated. Less stable, but faster to produce. If we adjust the harmonic frequency, we can compensate for the instability with targeted sonic pulses, Sarah finished. They had learned to work in sync over the weeks, each anticipating the other's thoughts. Get me engineering on the comm. We'll need to repurpose some of the station's crystal resonators. Hours blurred together as they fought to save lives. Sarah moved from patient to patient, her modified techniques allowing the medical team to stabilize the most critical cases. The human doctors, initially hesitant, began to display the adaptability their species was known for, quickly learning to read Vraxian vital signs and adjust treatments accordingly. But the crisis wasn't over. Deep within the damaged docking bays, the remaining crystal matrices from the cargo ship were becoming increasingly unstable. Their resonance patterns, disrupted by the initial explosion, threatened to cascade into an even larger disaster. The containment fields won't hold much longer, the chief engineer reported grimly. If those crystals shatter, the energy release could cripple the station's structural integrity. Sarah looked at Carrick's, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their crystalline surface. The polymer matrix, they said simultaneously. It's designed for organic crystals. One of the engineers protested. The scale alone. But the principles are the same, Sarah insisted. If we can modify it to work with synthetic crystals like we did with the power core, we would need a direct connection to the cargo bay's environmental systems, Carrick's added. Someone would have to go in there, adjust the harmonics manually while the matrix is applied. The implications hung heavy in the air. Entering the cargo bay meant exposure to raw crystal energy and highly unstable resonance patterns. Even with protective gear, it would be incredibly dangerous. "I'll go," Sarah said firmly. "I know the Matrix formula better than anyone." "Not alone," Carrick's responded, their voice creating harmonics of resolve. "The crystal frequencies must be perfectly calibrated. You need my sensitivity to the resonance patterns." Torres stepped forward. "Dr. Chen, this goes against all safety protocols." "Safety protocols don't account for everything we've learned these past weeks," Sarah countered. "Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from being willing to take calculated risks, to trust in possibilities others haven't considered." The preparation was quick but thorough. Sarah donned her modified protective suit, while engineers adapted Carrick's medical platform for the hazardous environment. They had one chance to get this right. As they entered the damaged cargo bay, the air itself seemed to vibrate with dangerous energy. The unstable crystal matrices glowed with an ominous light, their surfaces spider-webbed with fracture lines. "The resonance is chaotic," Carrick's observed, their own crystalline form vibrating in response. "We'll need to establish a baseline harmony before applying the matrix." Sarah began setting up the modified environmental controls while Carrick's extended their sensory crystals, seeking the fundamental frequency it would bring order to the chaos. They worked in perfect synchronization, human ingenuity and Vraxian insight combining to address a crisis neither species could handle alone. "Ready with the matrix," Sarah announced, her fingers steady on the controls despite the increasing vibrations around them. "Harmony pattern established," Carrick's responded. "Beginning resonance modulation. Now." The air filled with a complex web of sonic frequencies as they initiated their desperate gambit. Sarah watched the readings carefully, adjusting the matrix flow as Carrick's guided the crystal harmonics toward stability. For a moment, it seemed as though the very fabric of reality held its breath. Then, slowly but surely, the dangerous glow of the crystal matrices began to fade. The fracture lines stabilized, held in check by the modified polymer. The crisis point had passed, transformed into yet another breakthrough in human-Vraxian cooperation. Bridge between worlds. The aftermath of the crisis brought more changes to Helios Station than anyone could have predicted. News of the successful emergency response spread quickly through coalition space, drawing attention from both human and Vraxian authorities. The station's medical bay, once a simple emergency treatment center, had become the focal point of a revolutionary approach to interspecies medicine. Sarah stood at the viewport of her newly expanded research laboratory, watching vessels from various species dock at the station. Among them was a crystalline ship of Vraxian design, its faceted surface catching starlight in familiar patterns. The ship carried the latest group of medical exchange students, both human and Vraxian, eager to learn the techniques that had saved so many lives during the crisis. "The harmonics lab is calibrated and ready," Carrick's announced, moving smoothly on their now permanent mobility platform. They had chosen to stay on as the station's chief Vraxian medical advisor, their own experience bridging the gap between species proving invaluable. The new students are particularly eager to learn about the crystal resonance therapy. Sarah smiled, remembering her own early fascination with Vraxian physiology. "It's amazing how far we've come from those first uncertain treatments. Every day we're discovering new applications for the combined techniques." The laboratory itself was a testament to their progress. Hybrid medical equipment lined the walls, incorporating both human and Vraxian design principles. Treatment bays were equipped with adjustable resonance fields, capable of supporting patients from multiple crystalline species. Even the station's emergency protocols had been completely rewritten, emphasizing the importance of cross-species cooperation in crisis situations. "The Coalition Medical Council is reviewing our latest proposal," Sarah continued, pulling up a holographic display of their research data. "A network of emergency response centers, each equipped to handle multiple species. No more waiting hours for specialized medical ships to arrive." "A significant change from when I first arrived," Carrick's observed, their crystals pulsing with what Sarah now easily recognized as pride. "When most believe humans and Vraxians could never work closely together." Their conversation was interrupted by Dr. Torres, who entered carrying a data crystal, the Vraxian equivalent of official documentation. "It's approved," he announced, unable to hide his excitement. "The Coalition has officially designated Helia Station as the first interspecies medical research and training facility. They're allocating resources for a full expansion of the program." Sarah accepted the crystal, its surface catching the light just as Carrick's did. "It's really happening. Everything we worked for, everything we proved was possible, is just the beginning," Carrick's finished. "The methods we developed here have applications far beyond medicine. The crystal matrix stabilization technique alone has revolutionized space station design and ship construction." They were right. The crisis had demonstrated that the principles behind Sarah's medical treatments could be applied to synthetic crystals as well. Coalition engineers were already implementing modified versions of the polymer matrix in critical systems throughout known space, making ships and stations safer for all species. "We're getting reports from all over Coalition space," Torres added. "Species that once kept their distance due to biological incompatibility are finding ways to work together. Your treatments showed them it was possible." Sarah moved to one of the treatment bays, where a junior human doctor was working alongside a Vraxian healer to treat a patient. Their movements were synchronized, each contributing their unique perspective to the healing process. It was becoming a common sight throughout the station. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when I first started studying Vraxian physiology, people told me I was wasting my time, that the biological differences were too great, the risks too high. But that's the thing about humans. We see challenges as opportunities. We don't just adapt to differences, we learn from them, grow from them." Carrick's crystals shimmered in agreement. "Your species has a remarkable ability to bridge gaps others consider unbridgeable. Where others see barriers, you see doorways waiting to be opened." And sometimes, Sarah added, watching as more students filed into the laboratory, "those doorways lead to places no one expected to go." The station's communication system chimed softly, announcing the arrival of another medical transport. More patients, more opportunities to learn and teach, more chances to prove that the greatest advances come not from working apart, but from working together. Through the viewport, the vast expanse of Coalition space stretched out before them, filled with countless worlds and species, each with their own unique challenges and gifts to share. And here on Helia Station, a human doctor and her Vraxian colleague had shown that the key to unlocking that potential lay not in overcoming differences, but in embracing them. "Ready for another day of breaking barriers?" Sarah asked, already moving toward the arrival bay. Carrick's crystalline form caught the starlight, throwing rainbow patterns across the laboratory walls. "With you, Dr. Chen, every day brings new barriers to break, new bridges to build." And as they moved together through the busy corridors of their expanded medical facility, both human and Vraxian knew that they were part of something larger than themselves, a growing symphony of cooperation that would echo through Coalition space for generations to come.